All right, so Ray, it finally happened. What do we have? We have Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares quits abruptly over a strategy dispute, and I'm very curious because they had this dispute over the direction of the company, from what the article says, and then he resigned. So I'm very curious to know how this conversation went. Was it okay? Carlos got up in front of the board and said, "You know what? I really like the direction that we're going right now. I feel like we should continue to suck and keep sucking for many, many, many years because I'm getting paid $39 million while we're on this trajectory." And the board's probably like, "You know what, Carlos? Maybe let's try not sucking." And then they go back to Carlos and he's like, "Well, what about my $39 million? That's how I got my $39 million, is by sucking. So why would we change anything?"
It could have gone along those lines. I'm just shocked. This is the part that shocks me more than anything, that on a Sunday, on the first day of December in the year 2024, that Stellantis is having a board meeting on a Sunday. I mean, didn't that strike you as odd that, a major corporation, they normally work, I don't know, Monday through Friday, you get with the board. You're not doing this on a Sunday. So on Sunday, the board decided that they didn't think strategically that Carlos was doing what was necessarily best for the company, and they asked him to resign. And he was kind enough and gracious enough to offer up his resignation. I'm sure there must have been a large check attached to it, for him to do that. The board accepted. But doesn't it just seem odd that this all came to a head on a Sunday? Was it like an emergency board meeting? We need to hear what Carlos is thinking. Is that what it was that finally brought him to this point?
I almost wonder if they're calling the meeting on a Sunday or whatever. And I'm assuming the board called this meeting. Carlos is not saying, "Hey, you know what? We need to
Let's get
really talk
together.
about my $39 million and if I
Yeah.
should keep getting it." No, it's almost like, okay, some of the board, they were texting on a Saturday afternoon, and they're like, what are we doing? We need to pull this plug like right now. And I've had situations, in, not to say that my company can relate to a company of this size in any shape or fashion or whatever, but we've had situations where we've had employees of our company where we're like, it's kind of just like snaps when my wife and I are talking over dinner or something one night, and we're like, why are we continuing this? Let's do something about this tomorrow. And this might have been kind of what happened with the board. We're like, okay, we can't keep going like this. This is not successful. Something has to change. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off now. It's got to happen right now.
Yeah, and part of it was, from what I remember reading in the article, that they were concerned about his short-term plan for the company. But my guess is, and this is just a guess, that the short-term strategy was based on his pay plan. Okay, the way people like this get paid is based on stock performance typically. And well, the Stellantis stock has been tanking for months now because, well, sales have been tanking for months now. So he must have had this short-term strategy that was going to prop the stock prices back up. And my understanding is the board was more concerned about them looking at a long-term play as opposed to a short-term play. Well,
And just to stop you real quick, here's their stock price over the last 6 months. It's actually bounced quite a bit in the last little bit, because it was down 50% over the last 6 months. Now it's only down 43% over the last 6 months.
okay. Well, so maybe his short-term fixed strategy of bouncing that stock values back up was beginning to work, which would have probably meant that he would have earned every penny of that $39 million that they had paid him. Um, there's an old theory that you have to be careful of whatever pay plan you put in front of people, because there is a way in any pay plan to maximize it. And sometimes the collateral damage that's done because of someone working their pay plan wasn't what you had anticipated. And when you tie someone's compensation to stock performance, which in most of these major corporations, that's how they're paid. Well, this is what you get. Everything goes into the pooper. Now we got to figure out over the short term, how do we get it back up again? My fiscal year is coming up in March or whatever it is. I need to make sure that stock prices are up higher again. And so let's concentrate on the short term. Once we get that kind of sort of fixed, then we'll worry about a long-term plan. When the sad reality was, they knew, and if they didn't know, they should all have their heads examined. They knew 18 months ago, 24 months ago, that things were starting to trend in the wrong direction. They study data every damn day. That's how they decide on what they're going to produce and when they're going to produce it. So they knew, and they didn't do anything about it. So it was really, it's not just shame on Carlos, it's shame on the board. They let it happen.
So here's what they said too. It said that, okay, we knew that his contract was going to run out beginning of 2026, right? So the plan was to have him find his successor before that time period. But now they want him out now. And then what they're saying is that they're not planning on finding a new CEO until the first half of next year, somewhere in that time. They don't seem to be rushing it, which is fine. They shouldn't. But what they have said is that it's better for them in the short term to not have a CEO, to not have someone running their company versus having him there, even just plugging up a seat at the table.
Interesting. An interesting way to do it. We're going to have a CEO by committee. They're bringing over some of the people that worked in North America that were in upper management positions in North America for Stellantis. And you start to think to yourself, I mean, how many hats can some of these people wear? They keep getting shifted from position to position within the company. At some point, I don't know if you remember the book, The Peter Principle, but the concept of the Peter Principle is that everybody eventually moves up to a point where they can't actually produce what it is they're supposed to produce. You rise to your level of incompetency, and so how can every one of these executives end up being plug and play executives for every role they get thrown into over the last 6 months or 8 months, whatever it is? So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how CEO by committee actually works. Is it just going to be, well, whatever the consensus of the 3 or 4 or 5 people that are overseeing everything? Is it going to be a democracy? Whatever group has the most votes. I mean, how's it going to work? And then it'll just be interesting to me to see how they approach building back market share in North America, and bringing back their customer base that they abandoned since COVID. So that's the interesting part to me.
And I think they're really saying, okay, well, anything's better than what we have now. Let's just go a different direction. All right. So all of you watching it here, I know most of you are not subscribed. So I need you to hit that subscribe button. Whatever we need to do to get you to hit that subscribe button, Ray will do it. So just hit it for us and let us know what he needs to do down in the comments to get you to subscribe. But something that I found that was funny is that they have a forecast now to burn $10.6 billion in cash. And they're saying it's mostly due to slow sales and bloated inventory. That's nothing out of the norm. That's what we're That's what we've been talking about. But that $10 billion cash burn, that just got evaporated, right? Because they don't have to burn cash on him
Well,
now.
maybe he is part of that $10.6 billion cash burn. Somewhere in that 10.6 billion is the 20 million or 25 million, whatever the number is, that was negotiated between he and the board to get him to leave now instead of him sticking around until the middle of 2026, which was the original plan. And not to pat myself on the back, but nobody else does, so I have to.
Nobody else will, so you might as
Yeah.
well.
But I remember when they first came out and said that they were already looking for his successor, that the anticipation was that he was going to honor his contract and that he was going to fulfill that, and they wanted to have he, along with the rest of the board, come up with who the successor would be, and they wanted him part of that process so that successor would be ready to go when his contract expired. And I remember saying at the time that article came out and we discussed it, and I said, this is just a precursor of getting them out of there sooner. There is no way in hell that he actually is going to continue to work for this company until his contract expires in 2026. This is the nicest way of saying, Carlos, your days are numbered, buddy, and not just by the date on your contract, but they're coming through sooner. And nobody talked about it in the industry, nobody in the publications, but I don't know how you couldn't see that writing wasn't on the wall. They knew they had issues. They especially knew they had big issues in North America. It turns out that they have big issues in Europe as well. So why are you going to let that CEO stick around for another 18 months while you're looking for his successor? Why not do what they just did, which is, well, we're going to look for a successor. He's just not going to be here helping us find his replacement. But yeah, I'd be curious to find out what the final number is that they actually have to pay him, because I'm sure he didn't just resign with the idea that he'd get nothing.
Oh no, they definitely bought him out.
Yes.
I've been looking for that number all day. It's not out there yet. I don't know how long. I don't know if they even have to disclose that. I would assume they have to.
Well,
but
it's a publicly traded company. It's an expense.
Yeah, I just don't know how soon they have to actually release that number. But let's go through some of the things in the last 3-4 years that they've really done wrong. We'll see. You can say the Grand Wagoneer. There's one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a price point luxury. They wanted to make themselves a luxury brand, and they really cut off a lot of their base. And I feel like we talk about this a lot. I just went to a Jeep Dodge Ram dealership, and they had 19 Grand Wagoneers and Grand Wagoneers sitting on their lot, and they didn't have that many Wranglers. I mean, when you think about a Jeep, what do you think about? You think about Wrangler. You think about basic, rugged kind of vehicle at a decent price point. And that's not what Jeep is right now. And the direction that he was going in really shows that the board knows that there's a different way, because the consumer is not going to the way that he was trying to make the company out to be.
Just because you want to charge luxury prices doesn't necessarily mean you're selling a luxury automobile. It just means you're asking a luxury automobile price for it. Jeep, over the last 5 years, has raised their MSRP 61% during that 5-year period of time. There is no other major brand that has raised their MSRPs more in that 5-year period of time. No one else. And Stellantis overall raised their MSRPs 50% for all their brands overall. So what they did when there was a chip shortage and you could get away with it was they decided to go upscale price wise. and they decided they were only going to produce their highest profit margin vehicles. Now, when we say that, their highest profit margin vehicles get sold to their dealer network. That's who they sell to. Then it becomes incumbent upon the dealers to figure out a way how to sell that high overpriced product that they've been saddled with. When there was a shortage of vehicles, that was easy to do. As inventories built back up and Stellantis completely abandoned their entry level point for their brands, then all the inventory started building up and there was nobody to sell it to. And Stellantis's response to that when the dealer said, we need help, was, hey, we sold them to you. You figure out how to sell them to the customer. We're not here to help you with that. And that eventually prompted the dealers to write a public open letter to Stellantis and to Carlos Tavares saying, what the hell are you doing here? Which is not normal, to say the least, but there is no way that the board hasn't known that this was going to be an issue for the last 2 years. You could see it. Jeep sales have been declining every year for the last 5 years. Every year. And not by a little bit, but by a lot of it. How many years do sales of one of your most popular products have to decline for you to finally say, there could be an issue here, we need to do something about it? I don't know. I think the first year I would have seen declines, I would have been thinking to myself, okay, have we missed the mark somewhere? Is there something else we need to be doing? And it's like everybody at Stellantis just kind of buried their head in the sand and said, well, we'll worry about it next year. We'll worry about it next year. 5 years later, now they're so worried about it, they got to replace the CEO.
So here's the thing. So in doing all of this research for this show, as you know, I spend days and days and days researching before the show to get our show notes and everything done. But in the in the little bit of research I did, I could not find one negative or one negative comment about the situation of him resigning. Everything was, yes, okay, we're glad this happened. Shareholders are going to be happier. The board is happier. You have the UAW coming out and say, yeah, we want to see the new direction. You have dealers now that are saying that we are feeling better about the situation because now he's out. And it's interesting to see that one man can take on the brunt of all of this, and how many bad decisions you have to make where every individual body of what you represent throughout a company, whether it be from the consumer base all the way up to the board and every member in between is saying, yes, this is a good thing. How bad can it be?
It's got to be pretty bad to get to that point. And it's hard to imagine that he has not one ally left in the company that goes, well, it wasn't really his fault. There's nobody coming forward and saying, well, I share the blame with him. There's no one coming to his defense. Everybody and their brother is thrilled to see him gone. Sometimes these folks could end up disappointed because sometimes you're better off with the devil you know than the devil you don't. And they don't know at this point who the next devil's going to be. Now, I would imagine whoever it is they hire, initially, it's all going to be about bringing everybody together, bringing the North American dealer body back into their arms. They're going to, we want to have an open door policy. We want to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions. We're not just going to do anything unilaterally. It'll all be about bringing everyone under the big top again. as opposed to everybody fleeing the big top. Oh, the lions are out. Let's go. Let's run. So, it's like, okay, the lions have been caged and we're going to bring everybody back into the big top and we're going to figure out how to make this work. So that would be my guess as the initially what you're going to get from the new CEO of this company, whoever it may be, whenever he or she is announced.
And it feels like the CEO, for them to come in, they have to take a completely different direction of what has happened. That's because that's what everybody is wanting. So here's the thing. I'm almost worried that it's too late at this point, because even if you go a complete different direction, that different direction, if it's in the form of cheaper manufactured vehicles so we can get it a more affordable price point to our consumers, that's years down the road, because the vehicles that we still have in the pipeline now are these Grand Cherokees. We have Wagoneers in the pipeline still, and that are these crazy amounts of money, and they're booked out for the next 2 years at least. So even if you bring in a CEO today, he says, okay, we're going to make vehicles that are now, we're going to have a small SUV that's $20,000. We're going to have a midsize that's $35,000, and we're going to make a truck that's $45,000. Even if they say that, that's not coming out for another at least 2 years. So is it too late at this point? Or are we just going to see a bunch of dealerships have to just take the brunt of this and go under because of decisions that have already been made and that have to be sold?
I think that they can make some of those adjustments more quickly than we think they can. They can have everything that's in the pipeline still in the pipeline, but they can decide to make it 2 or 3 trim levels lighter than what they had originally planned. So I think they can turn that aspect of it around a little quicker than we would normally think. But it really is going to get down to studying the minutia in the details and the data to see where it is. Wouldn't it be interesting if just one time these manufacturers said, well, why don't we let the people tell us what they want? And maybe we'll build that. I mean, well, it's just a thought. It's a crazy, I understand it's a crazy thought, but sometimes the people that they need to listen to are the dealers at the dealership level, because they're the ones that are dealing with the customers, and the customers are telling them what they want. And they tell them that by not agreeing to buy the more expensive stuff when they keep walking away from that more expensive stuff. So perhaps it would just be in Stellantis's best interest to say, hey, we want to study the data and we want to listen to our dealer body as to what it is they want us to build, because they're the ones that actually have the ear of the buyer. And maybe they can turn it around more quickly doing that. And it shouldn't be that hard.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you that ain't going to happen. So let's move on to the next thing.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's my level of expertise that I can add into the conversation. Do the right thing for the company for the long term. No, we ain't about that.
Oh, maybe maybe it'll all be based on how they structure the new CEO's pay plan.
Yeah. I doubt they're going to be paying the next one $39 million.
I don't know. They might have to pay the next one more to get them to try and agree to come in and turn it around.
But we've already said, look, they just hire us. We'll do it for $3 million. Less than a tenth.
I'll do it for 10% of what they were paying them. 10%. Yeah. I might even split it with you. Because I'd be okay at I don't know, 1.9 million.
Yeah, and I'll take the rest. Let's do that.
Yeah, I can live comfortably on that. I mean, I got my cheap ass condo here at the shore. I mean, what do I need? All
right, and if we took over the company, what would it look like? See, there would be there would be like 3 models of vehicles, and there would be one model for 20,000. There would be another model for 28,000, and then a truck for $37,000, and that would be it.
I can assure you that if I was tasked with running that company, I would seek out. Yeah, nothing will be priced over $5,000. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And then there'll be a dealer markup of $25,000 on every vehicle.
I can just assure you that if I ran that company, I would be having conversations with my dealers because they're the ones that know what the customers want. And rather than us dictating to the customers, I would encourage the customers to dictate to us what it is they want us to build. And lo and behold, I'd figure out how to build it in large enough quantities that we could be profitable. I don't think it's that difficult, but what do I know?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. But I don't think it's going to happen. So,
well, yeah, that part's true.
Yeah.
Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, tell every living person you know that they need to subscribe to Car Sense with Brandon and Ray.